Live. Waiting for confirmation from Twitch. There we go. Yes. Excellent. So, I have decided I'm going to have a go at entering the OLC Codejam 2019. And Luke Cashwell is in the chat. Hello, Luke. And what I've got so far, some of you may know, some of you may not. On Saturday afternoon, I spent a couple of hours hacking together this, which is a platform game. It's quite a nice, robust little platform engine. So you use the A and D keys to jump up and down and move around. And you can press spacebar to jump, and it's got all of the collision detection in. Now, all I've done is taken this code directly from my Code It Yourself platformer video. Well, let's see, we've also got Magetsub, hello, Nana, hello, Annie, yeah, and magical collision detection. And what I've managed to do, maybe you can't see it with the bright background, but the idea was the character, or whatever it's going to be, because I really have no idea where this is going, and maybe in this stream we can come up with some ideas. Aims a weapon of some description and can fire a bullet, and when they fire a bullet they can destroy bits of the terrain. They can't destroy the rock. You still get the particles, but you can't actually destroy it. And I wanted to try and do something where you edit the terrain to your advantage. Maybe a little bit of a Metroidvania. So I was thinking perhaps we have different terrain types which need different weapons in order to control player progress, and then maybe throw some enemies in. But then I got to thinking, I don't know if I like the fact that it's a platform game. I think maybe if it was a spaceship or something like that, we could do something similar and use the same engine. So you can also choose not to fire bullets and instead fire platform. And so you can, if you destroy too much platform, you can put in some new ones. So there we go. Mind you of Jetpack. Yeah, Jetpack was probably a bit better looking than this. And it runs very nicely, so it's currently running about 1200 frames per second, which is not bad for the Pixel game engine. It's running very well. It depends how much stuff on screen it's got to render. So if it's got to draw all of the tiles, it can drop down to about 400 or 500 frames per second. So, what am I going to do with this? I really don't know. The one advantage I've got is the levels can potentially be quite huge, if not infinite. Now, I've been told that this in some way reflects a game called Terraria, if I'm pronouncing that quite right. I think that's where you keep terrapins, I'm fairly sure. But that's not my intention. The intention is not to be some sort of Minecraft-style thing. Nobody likes Minecraft anyway, do they? I quite like the fact that I managed to get the platforms to expand as they go out, because it makes them look more geographically realistic, I think. Yeah, the performance it's not bad at all. You can, the particles are lightweight, but they do bounce around the scenery accurately. So if you dig yourself into a hole, the particles aren't sort of escaping the hole. There's some cheap tricks I've done in order to get that kind of physics, and they fade out of existence. So I think maybe tonight, I don't really know where I'm going to go with this. I really am making most of this up as I go along, because I've not got too much time to spend on the jam. And Magetsub yesterday suggested, why not, well, he was thinking of implementing a top-down shooter where all of the scenery was, well, I thought, well, maybe the scenery could be destructible. So I might steal his idea. I'm undecided yet. But you can bounce around quite nicely. And I like the fact that there's terrain that you can't destroy, because that can be used to sort of create the level structure, I suppose. Oh, so there's no stream lag. Oh, that's very good. Good. There might be a bit of lag in me noticing somebody has typed into the chat, because it's not directly in my field of view. Anyway, to edit the levels originally, I wanted a really easy way to do that. So I'm just using an image. So this is the level I'm currently playing on. And this is a 256 by 256 image, but it could very well be a much larger image. The algorithm in the background really doesn't care. And it could potentially be chunked in the same way that Minecraft is, that it could just go on forever and you just selectively choose between templates if you're randomly generating the terrain, that is. So this is just my test level to start with. Hey, Danny Crom. Terrain you can't destroy equals instant gameplay rule. Yes. Kamsky also making a tile-based game in PGE. Performance is about 60 FPS. Didn't you ask me to lock the frame rate for you, or was that somebody else? If you're on Windows, there is a way to lock the frame rate so it syncs. Anyway, I think the performance is quite good. The resolution of the display is, I'll tell you precisely actually what the resolution of the display is, 512 by 480, and each pixel is 2 by 2 screen pixels. And it's capable of drawing, oh, wrong one, it's capable of drawing quite a number of tiles. I think it's drawing about, oh, what would you say that is? I don't know, actually counted them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So about 32 by 32 tiles. So 900-ish, well, 1,024 tiles. Let's get that right. And it seems fine. And there's no special tricks. However, the scenery destruction I'm quite proud of, because I have actually, it's actually the Pixel game engine that does the scenery destruction, and I think that's quite a neat trick. I'll explain how that's doing it actually. Let's catch up with some of the chats. Yeah, also yes, compiling in release mode will make a hell of a difference. So if I just pop this back out and compile in debug mode, let's just see what the difference really is. There are lots of warning. I'm getting some sort of template warning, I don't know why. So the frame rate in debug mode for the same parameter is about 150 frames per second. If I go somewhere where there's lots of tiles, let's see if we can bring that down a bit more. Keep going. So yeah, so this is now drawing lots of tiles, so it's about 80 frames per second, 75 frames per second it's settling out there. And then of course if you add lots of physics to it, that can bring it down a bit more. But now I've removed tiles, so the ultimate frame rate might increase slightly. But even in debug mode, you know, it's fully playable at the moment. Let's hang on, catch up. Looks like an old game called, I'm going to say Lero. Okay, Magetsu doesn't approve of that. It's compiled in release and your frame rate still is a bit slow. I mean, 60 frames per second is fine. You know, don't worry too much about it. Maybe there's something else in the code that's causing a problem. And golden rule is only draw what you can see, of course. That makes a big difference. What's the advantage of using WX widgets over Win32? Simplicity, really. Coding, well, Magetsu will disagree with me here, but coding things for yourself just using WinAPI is hard work. And of course, WX widgets just wraps up WinAPI in a nice, convenient way to use on a Windows platform. It wraps up GTK and other things on other platforms. Let's have a look. Where we're up to cross-platform. I don't know what that means. Yeah, you have to rewrite your code. Oh well, I didn't want to put anybody off writing their code. I mean, one of the things that may be slowing things down. Have you got something complicated going on in the background, perhaps? Oh yeah, on mine the bullets stop about 10 tiles after the about 10 tiles after the boundary of the screen. So that's why sometimes you can see when I shoot and there's particles appearing from somewhere, they're actually destroying things that you can't see. I don't know how I followed you, I have no memory of it, but glad it happened. Well, thank you, Hawk. Hey, Katoli or Katoli, never know how to pronounce these things. So the plan tonight is to try and think of some gameplay dynamic, because I've got this, I'm really pleased with its robustness, but I have no idea what to do with it. It seems it's quite fun in its own right. By the way, those who are joining, it's not blowing up where I'm clicking with the mouse. It blows up. It's as if the object in the middle fires a bullet in that direction. And that was a dynamic I wanted. It's not actually firing a bullet. It's doing a ray casting to determine which pixels it's hitting. Of course, it's only one ray, so it doesn't affect performance too much. So I can shoot a platform up there. I can jump. And this has made a slight modification to the platform game engine code, simply to allow the main object to be larger. And I've not done that in an elegant way at all, because in Jario the sprite was the same size as a tile, so there's lots of optimizations you can make there. But in this case, obviously the sprite, or whatever this placeholder in the middle will be, is much larger than a tile. So you don't want it to be able to, let's see if I can make this happen, you don't want it to be able to have a tile in the background go through the player object, which the previous engine wouldn't have been able to support. Let's have a look. Could you have it cubed, still 2D, so you can see the world in the background but only interact with the layer you're on, then with the ability to turn 90... You mean Fez? You want me to rip off Fez for the jam? Hello, Gilgif. Very, very tiny, the Twitch texts. Alamar, game looks good so far. Thank you very much. You should add a feature to rise up. Yeah, I think you're right. Crawling up the hill is a little bit tricky. It does involve jumping, and that's what I was thinking, because I don't want to spend every night this week doing this for the jam. I'm thinking of turning the player character into a spaceship and not having it landscape like this, but having it some sort of underground caverns you have to go and explore, or potentially underwater caverns, and that way you're sort of getting around that dynamic without needing to do too much code. Potentially, I was also thinking, is it worth having both, so the player can perhaps get into a spaceship, and that forms part of the Metroidvania theme, that you have to find the spaceship later on. I've also got to think about, where do I put enemies in this? Because, of course, if you can just blast your way through the level, how do they appear? And so I think the enemies have to appear out of the areas that you shoot or something like that. I have no real sort of sensible ideas yet. Fezaria. Is this Javidcraft? Not quite Minecraft. That's what we'll call it. So yeah, very large levels which are easy to edit is one of the things I wanted. I'm thinking some backtracking style gameplay. Yesterday I toyed with adding fluids to it as well, and I realised I just don't want to go down that rabbit hole. I really only want to spend maybe tonight and another night on this, because every night I'm spending on this, I'm not making emulation videos. So just remember that. yeah, it is Fez now. Thrust vectoring should be easy. Well, it should be. I mean, it's no different to the physics that I've got in place now. The character can jump. I just disable gravity, and then have some way of applying thrust. I was thinking just simply up, down, left, and right keys, rather than having a complicated rotation dynamic. Because I don't like playing games like that. There was that famous one, is it Solar Jetman or something like that? Really hard, because the ship is always rotating and spinning around and you're just crashing into things. I didn't like it so much. I also don't want to punish the player for hitting the scenery in any way either. They should just be able to navigate it one way or the other. So there you go, Kamsky. What were the 2 lines of code? What did they do? So yeah, I don't really know what I'm doing with this yet. The information on the screen is purely for debug, so there's a dashed line being drawn. If you didn't know, the Pixel Game Engine can draw dashed lines. It's the very last argument in the call to draw line, and the highlighted rectangle was just me checking it was hitting the right location. And so I probably want to add a few more tile types. Now, my biggest problem is I cannot draw. I am rubbish at it. It took me ages to draw these, which are the only tiles in the game at the moment. And then somebody suggested on the server, I think it was Diego, why not have different edges that are created dynamically depending on the state of the tile. So that's what I did. Ent Simulator, where you are a slow-moving tree man and you move around the world, evolves quickly from your perspective. You've not got the hang of this jam theme, have you, Nana? I mean, these are things you've got to be able to code in a few hours, realistically. It's not a bad idea, but I've got to kind of get it done within the sensible time frame. I also think I'm probably going to need a map of some sort, but that's easy enough, because if I need a map, I can just draw the underlying image. Because when I'm blowing up cells, when you see the explosions occur, let's find some land and blow it up. The background image, of course, is just a 2D array of pixels, and it's the Pixel Game Engine. It has tools for drawing circles and lines already. So what I've got in the background is actually an underlying image of pixels, and I'm using the draw line command here. In fact, I'm using several draw line commands built into the Pixel Game Engine to draw the new terrain. When I'm blowing something up, I'm drawing a circle of a particular radius in that image. And so I can leverage the things I've already got in the background. In fact, one of the things I'm leveraging, and it's one of the advanced features of the Pixel game engine. Let me just restart this because I can't find where the rock is. Let's go back up. So we have the idea of rock, which is indestructible. Here we go. So that is images in the pixels that is pixels in the background image as well. And you can see they don't get destroyed. But my Pixel game engine needs to be able to know the difference between the pixels that are in the image that can be destroyed and the pixels that can't. Now, normally if I just draw into an image with the Pixel game, it'll just overwrite whatever's there. But I didn't want it to overwrite it if it was rock, so that makes the rock impenetrable. And so to do that, I remembered that I'd implemented rudimentary pixel shaders into the game engine. Let's find it here. Where is it? I think it's up here. Up here, is it? That's the player movement. Where am I doing? Mouse clicks is what I'm looking for. Mouse clicks. So when I click the mouse, that fires the bullet, and here I have a little custom shader. Now, when the custom shader is in effect, all draw calls in the Pixel game engine get this shader applied to it. So you need to selectively enable it and disable it. And the shader is defined by this lambda function. So it takes in two parameters, x and y, and it'll give you the pixel color that you're trying to draw and the current pixel in that location. So if I'm drawing into my background image, which is this one, I look at the pixel that's already there in the shader and it says that's a grey pixel. It's rock. I've got the pixels defined here. So it says if the destination is rock, then just return rock, don't change it, otherwise overwrite it with whatever colours or situation I'm trying to overwrite it with. Now I've pressed something and put an error in my code. Where have I done that? And do you know what? I'm just going to press Ctrl Z. There we go. So using the pixel shader, because also, I should mention this right at the start, I'm using another feature of the Pixel game engine called off-surface rendering. So we're all very familiar with drawing circles and lines and sprites and things to the main screen. But one of the things you can also do is nominate any sprite to be the target of the draw calls. So you do that with the set draw target function. So here when I'm causing the explosion, I have a little function called boom, which spawns all of the fragments that go bouncing around. Then I set the draw target to be the image which represents the level in the background, and then I'm filling the circle with what is my tile empty pixel. In this case it's white, full white pixel. But then you must remember to then set the draw target back to the screen, because you don't want to not be able to draw things to the screen later on. Let me just have a quick catch up. You're going to encroach on Fish's territory. Why, is he about to stream or something? So really what I'm doing is some fancy, very simple image processing in the background using the Pixel game engine's built-in tools. There's not this. I mean, this is the entirety of the code so far. Most of it is loading up the levels. I'll just stop it running in the background. Most of it is loading up the Pixel game engine, loading up the two images. So one of them is an image that contains the level itself. Another one is an image that contains those tiles. You'll see some bits relating to fluid. I'm going to get rid of those because I wasn't very happy with the end result. I'll come back to that maybe at some point in the future. And on user update, I've literally cut and paste the platform game engine code in. I've added a few more collision points to the object. It's not very tidy. This is a game jam. I'm trying to speed code it in a way. So I'm not too bothered about elegant looking code or really accurate code. But it's all exactly the same as the platform game engine. The platformer code it yourself game engine I did about 2 years ago now. I have two more functions in here. One's called toWorld and toScreen, because as many of you that frequently watch my videos know, I like to separate my game space from my screen space. Quite an important thing to do, and it allows you to arbitrarily draw the world any way you see fit. You can zoom in, pan around, whatever, because the screen is detached from the world. A very useful thing. I thoroughly recommend you always do that. Never sort of have your character moving around in screen space, in sort of, in pixel space. It's just not worth the hassle. Because if you want to change something, you've got to change it in lots of different places then. So Rogue, no, watching anime isn't going to help. It's just not. That could be said about almost anything, really. Watching anime is just not going to assist. Right, so I've got my mouse coming in, and this is called the Dda Algorithm, which stands for Digital Differential Analysis. And it's a nice little technique to cast a ray quickly. So if any of you have found my YouTube channel and probably at some point may have watched the first-person shooter video at the command prompt, the way we cast a ray was to shoot the ray out and shoot it out in little tiny steps until it hits something. The disadvantage of that, of course, is it's very slow if it's got to go over a long distance. So the Dda approach, I've not invented it, it's an established approach for casting a ray along axis-aligned grids. Basically tries to find the most optimal way to get from one cell to the next. So the number of steps required is significantly fewer. I might revisit the first-person shooter engine at some point and maybe implement this and see if we can get that 7,000 frames per second up even more, although I think we're getting limited by drawing at that point. Tutus is coding by watching YouTube. How's the NES game coming along, Tutus? Could you send the world and to screen to the Discord? I would really like to have a quick look into that. Yeah, I'll just drop that in. Where should I do it? I'll put that in. I'll put it in the Jam chat. Let me just copy those out. They're really just a scale and offset, but it just makes that distinction between the two. It's good to have that boundary. I'll just paste that in right now. Sorry, Gorbit, I'm going to interrupt whatever you're typing. Of course, the formatting's gone all over the place, but hey. So you got Collision up and running. Oh, sorry, Holy Seraphimon. What am I doing? Well, I've decided to enter my own jam. Obviously, I can't win. People can't vote on my entries. And I don't know what I'm doing. That's the problem. I've developed a nice little engine. It's robust. I'm happy with it, but I don't know what to do with it. I need to turn it into a game. And so I was just reading off Tutus. So Tutus is creating a NES game, since we've been doing some NES emulators recently. He's actually trying to compile it for the NES, and it's looking pretty swish so far. I'm really impressed for a few days of never having done it before to actually having things on the screen. Rogue, one of my key engine features is capturing clicks on particular entities from any scale or rotation and position and drawing in relative space. Oh, that's quite an interesting thing, actually, sort of picking out non-axis aligned shapes with the mouse. Are you doing that using sort of a barycentric coordinate system and triangulating your models? I mean, that's how I would do it. Matty, hello. Hello, Matty. Yeah, sorry about that in OLC Codejam 2019 Discord. I've dumped that in there for Kamsky. Don't worry, Jevin. 2 days of never having done it before will always be beaten by 2 days of burning out. Some sort of multiplayer battle. I don't think I'll be having any kind of networking facility in this. Not in the time that I'm going to allocate. So I thought tonight it might be interesting to start trying to think about different weapon types and different tile types, so you don't have every tile is destructible by the same weapon, because I think one of the dynamics of the game is you need to find the weapons you need in order to destroy the terrain that you need to get through. My concern overall, though, is it's always very much a downward spiral, this game. You sort of always gravitate down the screen because as you start destroying scenery, that's where you start falling. And I'm a bit concerned that I don't like this approach very much of being able to generate platforms. But if you could fly, then perhaps you could get up to these higher tiers. Is this Matt? Yes, it is, Matt. Java 2D affine transforms. Well, if you're doing affine transforms, creating the converting the mouse coordinate relative to the shape that you've transformed, just run it through the same transform. Nothing wrong with using the CGE. It's fine. Yeah, and you're right, Rogue. An affine transform is just basically a matrix in the back end. I did a video about affine transforms and their construction. It was an okay video. Affine, for those that are using the Pixel game engine, by the way, all of the affine transform stuff was wrapped up in the Graphics 2D header, which allows you to scale and rotate and skew any arbitrary sprite and display it to the screen. It does have a little bit of a performance overhead, but for most games it's fine. I used it in Saving Sedit quite a bit because the characters needed to be scaled and animated differently. So it was quite fine. So let's get up here. So I think when we start destroying... so this is the very top of the level, and so it's just determined that the pixel there is black. I'll probably have to put in a special clause for that, not to generate particles when it gets hit. But you can't destroy it, and you can't necessarily escape out of the level either. It sort of pushes you back in. I did find one little glitch though, and that is if you start to generate lots of platforms and sort of trap yourself in. See if I can do it, because you can sort of shoot the guns. I won't be able to do it now. Oh, there we go. So the platform engine always tries to find an escape if it can, and sometimes if you've got a big wall, here we go, perfect. If I start, there we go. See, so we're sort of zipped to the to the next available space. I can probably easily fix that, but it might be a fun hack to leave in as well. Maybe if it ends up having a clock or something, the speedrunners might enjoy trying to abuse that. And we'll have to think about maybe that as a dynamic too. There's a serious lack of crisps. For those that don't understand that reference, we've been debating on the Discord server today what are the best flavoured crisps, because we're just that exciting. And of course cheese and onion is the winning flavour. Does it have to be graphical? Could the jam be into it? It doesn't have to be graphical at all. If you just want to do some text mode application, that's fine too. I have no problem with that. Javid, do you know how to project one line segment onto another line segment? Yes, it's just the dot product. It's a feature, not a bug. This is giving me flashbacks to my own physics code. Cheese and onion. Yes, exactly. Thank you, Danny. Cheese and onion. Paprika Pringles. Pringles aren't even crisps. Or chips to our non-English. They're just crisps. They're not chips. Chips are what you eat with fish. Yeah. Right. So let's get on with trying to code something. So maybe I need to add some additional tile types to the game, and I was thinking something that's a bit harder than regular mud in this case, but not as hard as rock. So that requires a different weapon to destroy. So I need to pick a colour first. Let's find colour that we can use. RGB. What can be a harder rock? Probably a deeper shade of mud, I think. Let me see. What have we got? Let's pick. Still trying to sort of feel my way around Affinity Photo at the moment. So if we pick 64 for you and 32 for you, that gives us a darker mud colour. That's fine, and we'll draw this into our map as being something that's harder than the regular terrain. So we'll just, we'll just splad some of those into here. Yep, splad is a word, I've just made it up. There we go. So that's something that's a little bit harder, needs a different type of weapon in order to destroy. I'll put some here as well. So, why bother going to the effort of making a level editor when we've all got level editors already? So if I save that, what do I say that was? 6432. So I'm going to save my image, and I'm just going to export it as a PNG to the right location. Export test level, yep, do it. So at the moment, if I run the game again, it should just probably go a bit strange because it's not got a reference for what that pixel type means. See, there we go. So it's not got anything it can draw it with, but the pixels do exist. So we need a corresponding darker mud texture. Let's have a think about doing that. Now I've got to do this in Affinity, which is again something I'm not too familiar with. So we'll have a look. And I think what I want to do is probably exactly the same as that, but just darker. So that's what I'm going to try and do. Let's see how I can learn these tools. So if I just move this one, let's zoom in a little bit. If I move this one over a little bit, does that move it? No, that's not moving it. What do I do to move it? Maybe I can't move it. This section is locked and cannot be removed. Unlock the selection to transform it. Okay, there we go. Unlocked. Ah, now I can move it. Ah, but it's doing this horrible sort of transparency thing as I don't get it in quite the right place. Don't like that. That caused me some problems the other day because I couldn't edit the alpha channel in this software. It's a bit strange. So I'm not going to do that just yet. I think what I'll do is cut and paste this first, and then we'll just recreate the stone texture as necessary. So I'm going to grab all of you. Well, I can just, actually I don't need to do that, do I? I can copy and paste all of that. Bring you over, and we'll just stick you there. You see, it does that slight transparency thing. That must be a setting somewhere where it's trying to anti-alias the edges. But it does cause some problems. I don't know. If anybody knows Affinity, knows how to do that without causing transparency to occur, do let me know. It'd be very useful. Failing that, I'll just have to load it up in Photoshop. I'm trialing Visual Studio 2019 at work at the moment, and I've found on the whole it's okay, but it is struggling a little bit in some of my larger work projects, and things like the IntelliSense cache is constantly getting corrupted, so I don't know what's upsetting that. So I don't want to put that there. I don't want it to do this blurring thing. How do we get around that? I just wanted to cut out the image directly. Some sort of constrain tool there. Don't know what that's done. That's let's put something else there. Copy. Paste. What does it say here? So to move, drag to move the selection, click another object to select it, click on an empty area, shift to constrain, control to clone objects. That's probably what I did. Don't want to do that. Yeah, snap there. Okay. So maybe that's done it. And what I'll do now is find a way to just darken that, which I guess is an adjustment layer. Brightness and contrast. Yeah, we'll start with that anyway. I just want it, right now, I can always do the graphics again later. I just want it to look darker. There we go. Okay, so let's export that, and we'll add this into the terrain. Export. Yeah, that's to my tiles PNG, and we'll see. And so now I need to create a new tile type. So my tiles are effectively pixels in the image, so I'm just defining them here as pixels. And it seems like a really convenient way to work out what is what in the image too. So we've got mud. Let's have, what's tougher than mud? Clay. Clay is tougher. And we said that the colour of clay was 64 by 32 by 0. So I've added a new tile type. So I just want to go where I'm rendering the tiles now at the bottom. So if the tile was mud, it was all of that. Because it's deciding in real time whilst it's trying to draw the tiles which sprite to choose from the sprite sheet. Because remember, the image in the background is just an array of pixels. It doesn't have information saying I've got grass or I'm at the bottom or anything like that. It's just the pixels. So that's all decided at runtime. And so we don't want another tile mud, we want another tile clay. And the location on the sprite sheet is now 2 columns across. The columns are 16 by 16, so let's change that over to 32. Let's have a quick catch up. Is this game development? Yes, in a way it is, yeah. Snap to grid. Yeah, I think that was the tool I ended up using. It's just knowing what the keyboard shortcuts are. You have GIMP installed. I've never really got on with GIMP. Too many windows. I know they've changed that in the most recent version, though. VS27 Enterprise, didn't really want to switch. Well, I mean, I'm using 2017 here. For me, it's totally fine right now, and most importantly, it's stable. The last thing I want is, whilst I'm currently making videos and doing things like that, is to suddenly lose the ability to do that. And also, a lot of my videos so far, the ones where I show how to set up the project, it does look quite different in 2019. So I need to find a nice way to show that at some point before I make the change. Who else have we got? Hey, Lime Pixel, hello. And Trenus, hello. Okay, yeah, Magetsub's really into sort of image processing software in general. He knows them all, so if it's saying it's got a single window mode now, then that's great. I tell you what other piece of software I really don't like, and that's excuse me, that's Inkscape. I find that so complicated to use. So we've drawn in now some new tiles. So let's just compile that and see if they render, and let's see if we've managed to do it correctly in the software. It's looking good so far. They look like they've appeared, at least. There we go. So we've got our new tile set, and right now they're still destructible. You'll notice the particle colours are influenced by the type of terrain that's being destroyed. And that's because it uses the background image to determine what those colours should be. So these are actually the colours of the pixels in the background. Potentially, maybe when I get to the stage where we're trying to make this look a little prettier, I'll texture these little squares that bounce around. Anyway, I really recommend Affinity. It does take a little. It's not got the same shortcuts as Photoshop, but it's just as competent. So it has all the same filters and settings, and it generally is the same piece of software, but just a lot cheaper. And they also have their own vector art package as well called Designer, and the two complement each other a lot. So we want to be able to only destroy tiles now selectively depending on the weapon. Now I'm thinking that should be the same as how we're just not destroying the rock. So I need to think of a mechanism that says, depending on the power of your currently selected weapon, what tier of landscape can that weapon destroy. So let me have a look at the shader code that we're using to do that. Where did I put my shader code? Be up here. So right now it just says if it's rock, always return rock. That's true. What we probably want on top of this is we need something that identifies which weapon we're using. So let's just throw a variable in here. N weapon equals 0 by default. Maybe 0 means no weapon later on. Don't know. So weapon is 0 currently. Now, do we want it in the case that stronger weapons can destroy both types of terrain? Maybe so. So let's have a think about that. I've lost where my shader code was now. Not here. Do you know what I think would be really nice in Visual Studio? And they may already do it somehow, but some sensible way of bookmarking particular parts in a file with a nice text description to say this is what's here. So you can just jump to it pretty quickly. So if my destination is rock, I'm going to return rock. If it's not rock, I don't want to just return the source because I want to now check. Just gonna say, is it power based or type based? Well, that's exactly the question. That's what I'm trying to think. Oh, hey Phil Boswell. Hey, nice to see you on Twitch. Don't get to see you very often here on Twitch. Yeah, see, I think the game might just frustrate the player if they've got to continuously change weapons to destroy land types. I think it's more fun that to begin with they've got to follow a route which is limited by their weapons, and as they get progressively stronger and stronger weapons, they can unlock parts of the level later on. It's sort of a really hacky way to implement Metroidvania style gameplay. So, what am I doing? I want to check some sort of comparison with my weapon. So if n weapon is equal to 0, now my tiles aren't ranked numerically. That's what's making this a bit more fun. How can I rank my tiles? Yeah, do I want to? I don't want to combine them with something that is going to upset the underlying image, because my tiles right now are just represented by the pixel color. So if I wrap those into a more complicated structure, that would make things a little trickier later on. I want to keep the code really simple. So maybe we do just sort of brute force this. So if the destination... Right, okay, let's try and think of it like this. If weapon equals 0, if pdest equals tile mud, then we can return psource, which is the color of the pixel I'm drawing things with. Wakey wakey, there we go. But anything else, excuse me, anything else fails. So tile 0, yes, so that's how we'll do it. Pdest. So if it can't solve that, if it can't delete that, then it just does that. Okay, let me just see what happens here. So I should be able to destroy the mud just fine, but I can't destroy the clay. Good. Ah, that's quite interesting. Yeah, so it's just drawing a circle around wherever the hit is. So it is potentially you can destroy land that's underneath something. I may have to think about that. Might also do that in the shader. When we get going with the gameplay, I think what I'll do is re-implement the circle drawing routine to take into account that it can't go past certain boundaries. But for now, I'm happy with it. It's okay. So that weapon can't destroy mud. Mud. Do we call it mud? No, we called it clay. However, if we've got weapon 1, so weapon 1 can destroy mud and it can destroy clay. So we're just going to brute force our way through this. This is jam coding. This isn't serious coding. So I need a way to change weapons. Let's just assign them to numeric keys for now. We'll be doing some user input. Let's get some user input. User input seems to be up here. There we go. If it's focused, okay, good. If get key OLC key. What were they? Were they keyboard 1? I think it was keyboard 1 for that, wasn't it? Dot B pressed. N weapon equals 0. And if it's 2, then N weapon equals 1. Let's have a quick catch with the chats. In C# Visual Studio shows you all the functions if you open a class in the Solution Explorer. Yeah, I don't like using classes in Solution Explorer. We have that here too. I can also use these drop downs to find the classes, to find the functions. The trouble is, even when your functions get large, finding them can be quite tricky. It's under properties, isn't it? Is it? No. It's some. I have to select the class, don't I? There we go. So yeah, the functions are here. It's okay way to navigate, but it's not my preferred way to navigate. I just prefer to have files there. Or if you're like Annicator, you have 7 million tabs at the top. Call it prototyping. Yes, I suppose it is more like prototyping, isn't it? Serious question. What's the difference in approach between jam coding and serious coding? Technically nothing. Right? As long as you're having fun, both are fine. For jam coding, though, you're up against a bit of a time limit, so you do tend to cut some corners. You won't check all of the necessary inputs. You won't make sure all your variables are sensible. And for me, because I also want to make some NES emulation videos this week, I've got a really limited time budget to play around with this. So I'm just really throwing together bits of code I've already written, cutting and pasting things in, but just doing whatever I can to make it work. Is it okay to have one file per class in C++? Yes. Yes and no. I would say if you're not really super comfortable with C++, always break your classes into a header and a CPP file. Because you can do it. I mean, the Pixel game engine itself is, of course, a class. It's a big one, which has all of the header information and all of the body information of that class in a single file. But of course, it's a header file, so you have to tell it to compile somehow. And that's why at the start of any class that derives from the Pixel game engine, we have this define at the top. And that's telling it that for this compilable unit, this particular CPP file, please provide the implementation of this class, which is guarded in the header file by that flag. That's an unusual quirk simply because I wanted the Pixel game engine to be a single file. If that bothers you, there is a way around it, which is really simple indeed. What you can do is you can create, let's create a new item, and I'm going to create a CPP file. What kind of weirdness is all this? CPP file is what I want. Let's go to the project. There we go. Add new item, CPP file. If let's say we create one called OLC Pixel Game Engine.cpp, and all I'm going to have in this file is that. Let's go to it. And then I can go back to my main project file. I can get rid of that. So now I can treat the Pixel game engine like any other class in any other system. So this will work really nicely if you've got lots and lots of files in your application, and more than one is tying into the Pixel game engine. That's the point, Kamsky. It doesn't matter if it's not all going to plan. It doesn't matter if it's any good at the end of the day. It's just about having a little bit of a challenge for yourself. And those that do enter, I'm hopefully going to try and show a lot of the videos online. Although I've become aware there's there's potentially a lot of submissions. So if we end up with something like 50 or 60 submissions, I don't think I'm going to run through all of those. However, it's community judged, so I'll probably try and choose a good mixture of them, because I don't think I can sit and record 60 individual programs to show in a video, and I'm not entirely convinced that many people would watch that video. So it's not a huge return for the channel to do that, but I will certainly be featuring a lot of the entries, maybe just not all of them. You like having one file per class since you're used to Java? Yeah, Java does it nicely. It's just it's the way C++ works. It's the way that you have preprocessor instructions going on. It's the way that C++ is compiled sort of from a bottom-up perspective from the CPP file, and it only compiles one CPP file at a time, so everything needs to be included in the right order, and things can get a little bit messy if you start using that particular class in multiple locations. So just be aware of that. It is good Twitch content. I think I'll definitely be streaming playing the games, certainly. Herbal Dance, hello. Right, so we've just added a new tile type to the game, and we were testing weapon capability, weren't we? So it should be by default weapon 0, which should be able to destroy this terrain. Let's just go down here and make sure it can't destroy that terrain. Good, it can't. Now if I press the 2, was it? I should be able to destroy that terrain, and I should be able to destroy that terrain. Okay. But even with weapon 2 selected, I shouldn't be able to destroy rock. Nothing can destroy rock. Rock will live on forever. Okay. So, instead of just drawing big splodges all over the place, let's have a think about a little bit of a sensible level design. Do I have a palette that I'm using? I do have a palette that I'm using. It seems to record the palette. I wonder if I can... Yeah, okay, so I can save the palettes in this tool. That would be quite useful. So, let's have a think about a little bit of level design. I'm going to assume the player is going to start in the top left. So I'm just going to, for now, delete all of that. So if the player is going to start somewhere in the top left, I probably want a boundary that they can't really escape from all the way around this image. Right, how am I going to do that in Affinity? So I'm going to just hack it by drawing rock. Now if I hold down Shift, oh no, wrong. If I hold down, there we go. So I'll just fill in this boundary. So it's going to be a big level. And what I might do is start creating some layers with different things in. So this could just be boundary layer, because I'll probably end up taking this out at some point. Run out of fingers to scroll and draw and everything else at the same time. I could use my graphing tablet, I suppose, but I'll not bother. Now with the pixel tool, if I hold down Control, that deletes pixels. There we go. And what I'm going to do is my background actually clear? Let me just see what, yes. So the background where I don't want it to be alpha, I want it to just be white. So that means nothing in the background. I'm going to rename that layer to, how do I rename a layer? Oh, fair enough. Border. Background. Right, so let's add to that, new layer. And actually I probably do want the border at the top. Oh, I've grouped them now. Let's put that there. Let's have a look. Started with OOP with Java, but I'm quite comfortable with C++ header and code style. You get used to it. It might be a stupid question, but can you add 2 sprites to merge them in one PG? You can't numerically add the sprites, but you can certainly draw one sprite into another. As Herbal Dance is filling in there. Does Visual Studio make it easier to set up header and source file per class? Oh, you've mentioned the naughty word there. You don't mention that word on my chat. Yes, it does. Visual Studio makes it very easy indeed. You go to Project, Add Class, type in your name, click OK, and it'll just create all of the stuff that you need. If you really want to get into it, you can go to the class wizard. I don't think I've used this since 1995. You can even tell it's really set up to handle things from MFC. It's like a tool that's been here since the dawn of time. But you can go and add in everything that you need manually if that's what you want to do, but it's just quicker to type it out. So yeah, no problem at all in Visual Studio. I don't know what it's like in code blocks. I can't use code blocks for more than 3 minutes. I don't usually shout opinions like that on any of my outputs, because I know some people go, oh, but I like it, but I just think it's sad. It's sad because there's obviously a group of very talented developers working on it, and they're working hard on it. I just think it lags so far behind the other freely available tools that I just wouldn't consider it. It is lightweight though, and on Linux, because I really don't like VS Code either, but on Linux I would be tempted to use code blocks if I had to. So there we go. As my viewership now goes woomph. Right. I think what I like about Visual Studio is it is an integrated development environment. It's all in one place. It's not a collection of different tools all sort of bodged together. Well, I guess it kind of is behind the scenes, but fundamentally it does feel coherent. And I still maintain I have yet to use a debugging system better than the Visual Studio debugger. It's a really intuitive, fast, powerful tool. And absolutely invaluable when you're starting to develop things seriously. You'll notice in my videos I don't often pop the debugger up, of course, because it's not very interesting in videos watching me debug code. But on Twitch streams, it happens too frequently. Right, what was I doing next? So we've added a weapon. Oh, we were drawing levels, weren't we? That's what I was doing. Keep getting distracted. So I don't know what a suitable player space is. I've got a grid here that I've set up to be 16 by 16 pixels, so maybe that's not a bad shout for sort of a zone. So I put in a ledge of rock. Oh dear, ledge of rock there. Do you know what I'm going to try? I'm going to try this, where is it? Stabilizing tool. So this is quite nice. This is a nice tool. When you start drawing, see, it gives you a little sort of bit of rope attached to the pixel. So you can, if you've got a jittery hand or whatever, it allows you to draw nice, smooth things with some degree of control. It's quite nice. Anyway, so how do we make this look a little bit more like the start of a level? Probably got some sort of staircase. I don't know, and maybe something else. Because we want the player to basically learn how to move the character to start with before starting to destroy bits of scenery. Right, so I'm going to save that. I wish there was a quick shortcut to export to PNG as well. Right, save, yes, overwrite. Now, my character is going to start at 0, 0. I think I need to get them to start at the actual location I want them to be. They're 4 by 2 pixels high in effect, so that location is currently 8 by 11. So let's start the player off at 8 by 11. I need to find, where is my player pos? Player pos. There we go. Is this going to let me do this? I don't know. 8 by 11. Oh, it might. Let's see. Right, nice. Okay. Now, of course, the player won't be a red rectangle. I'll add some sort of sprites. But what I can see already is basically my screen, which makes sense because it's 32 by 32 pixels almost, is 4 of my grid units in that world. And probably to start with, the player won't even have a weapon at all. We just want them to get familiar with how to move and jump around. Now, I do want to have collectibles, and I'm probably going to need some switch logic of some description in here. I've not really decided on that yet. So, maybe this is in a locked door, and it tells you that you've got to collect something in order to get out. So maybe that's what we start with. We'll start with fleshing this out a bit. So there is actually no terrain to destroy. It is just so we'll lock the player in. Let's fill up. So this is going to be sort of the starting zone. And this is the nice part, right? This is the bit I never get to do very often, is to sit and just draw out a level. Should have put that stabilizing tool on. I'll tell you what, I'll use the shift key, given that that's what it does. There we go. Control, get rid of those. We probably don't want that to just be a single pixel wide. There we go. And we'll have some... I don't know how high the player can jump in one hit. That's interesting. Let me just add some symmetry to this to flesh it out a bit. Right, so that's going to sort of say the player's got to at least move and jump to get through there. We'll probably have some other feature or something up here. Why not? Because we might have something collectible up here. It teaches them how to collect. Right, I just want to feel how that, well, sorry, I just want to see how that feels. So we'll just export again. Maybe, I think I can record a macro that just does that. That would be really convenient, but I'll not dig into that right now. Let's have a quick catch up with the chat. Sublime text. Yeah, there's one of my colleagues at work swears by Sublime. It always pops up with that little irritating message saying you've got to buy it. Qt Creator, probably the best open source IDE there is. Yeah, I know you're a fan of that. Fine, okay. Jario returns. What is the scale of the player to map tile? So the player is 4x2 map tiles. I might make them a bit smaller. One of the things I wanted here was destructible scenery, which we saw at the start of the video. And so that means I need the tiles to be considerably smaller than the player, else it looks silly if they're the same size. You're sort of blasting up an entire player-sized chunk at any given time. So I think that looks okay. Now, the player... okay, so that might be interesting. Can the player actually get up there with the jump? Yes, okay, so they've got to do a long jump. Now, the player also won't actually see this line or the yellow circle. That's just for me to debug at the moment. Okay. So my quickly hacked together level editor is proving to be okay. Now once they've fallen down here, they can't get back up. Now that might be an interesting dynamic to take advantage of. Why? Yeah. I'm not going to implement wall jumping, I don't think. Not this time. We did wall jumping in the last jam. Okay, so collectibles, that should be probably something else we need to add. Now, I don't know how to reference it, so maybe I need a second image which has, this one's obviously scenery, but if we have a second image that contains game logic things, I could use that as a different layer in the image editor. So let's have a think about that for a second. So this is my game level, so we'll no, excuse me, we'll call that terrain, and if I add another layer, new layer, collectibles, and I don't know what we'll have for a collectible. Let's choose, well, what should we collect? Obviously we know we want to be able to collect the weapons, so I've got basically 16 million different types of objects. Is that right? What's 2 to the 24? It's more than that anyway. So potentially lots of different objects, but I only want to have a few, so I'll choose a few different colours to represent where the object exists. Could you design the camera following by casting rays from the player 4 different directions and then decide whether the camera should move or not? Ah, you mean like we saw, who was it? Was it CDT90 from the Discord server? Has a collision box in the middle. Yeah, so my player, what Magetsup is referring to there is my player. Let me find Lost Visual Studio now. Basically, the player is, the whole level never leaves the screen, but the camera follows the player as if it's in the middle all the time. And that's actually not the nicest way to move the camera around. Sometimes you want the player to be able to move slightly to the left and right and up and down before the camera starts to follow. I guess another option is Leaky Camera, which I could also experiment with, where the camera, so as you start moving, the camera then sort of follows you with a latency. I wonder how well that would work. Is it worth a quick try? It might be worth a quick try. Well, before we do that, I just want to throw in some additional scenery here. We'll come back to collectibles in a minute. Let's go and have a look at adding some mud, because effectively we want the player to learn that this is what they need to do. So I'm going to add some mud everywhere here, except for a little pocket of it, because inside that pocket we could put maybe the first thing that you need to collect. Or, even better, let's think of it like this. So there's a staircase going up to this. They fall into the muddy area, and that's where they can pick up the first weapon, but they have to shoot in order to get out. A bit like the high jump boots in Super Metroid. So let's try and keep it earthy as much as we can. So they're going to come up here. Got to remember to keep it at least so the player can get in there. So that's 5 pixels. And we'll channel that out. We'll have the weapon somewhere down there. But they can't actually get up there. They need to go up a staircase to do so, because they can't jump high enough. So we'll put in a staircase here. Something obvious. And just give them a little leg up just in case they need it for the jump. Right, let's just see that. So file, export again, save. Right, so they can come down here, and they've not got a weapon yet, so they come down here and they go, right, the only way I can go is up there. They can see something shiny down here. But I need to get them to be trapped in there. So I might need to think that through a bit, because I think my player can easily jump out of here. Yeah. So I do want this wall to be a bit higher, and then once they're in here, they've picked up the weapon, and then they've learnt that they can blast their way out. Okay, so I don't need my little launch platform, but I do need to make this a little bit higher. Brown. Let's clear that out. So that's like that. And we'll stick in we'll stick in a little overhang just to make things a bit trickier. There we go. We can get rid of you. Let me catch up with some of the chats. Add some triggers there. Hey Gareth, you've been shopping? Well, we've been talking about food a lot on the server today. For those that don't know, Gareth Hubble is also a streaming coder. Currently, well, he streams basically any language. It is always an education watching Gareth stream something. He'll take on the challenges I'm too afraid to take on. So if you really like your acronyms and your weird ESO-langs and all that sort of thing, he's the guy to follow. I think that's a compliment, Gareth. It is an easier to use Photoshop once you've learned how to use it, and given I've been using Photoshop for almost 20 years, it's taking a bit of getting used to. But it is a lot cheaper than Photoshop, so I like it. Do you prefer to do after processes using a switch case or by polymorphism? It is entirely situation dependent. Polymorphism is a great thing if you want your objects to be different. If you just want to very insignificantly change something, it's totally overkill to go down the polymorphism route. I know Java really encourages everything being interfaces and everything being lots of classes. I just find that a little distracting when you've got to jump between lots of files just to see one line of code that's different. So you use it carefully. You're watching this before working on your entry. Well, it's because you're looking for some inspiration, and this is the wrong place because I don't have any, and that's why I'm struggling with an idea for this game. What is this? This is called Affinity Photo. Now, it's a one-off fee of £40, so it isn't super cheap. but they've been updating it. It's been going for quite a number of years that I'm aware. It's an English company. They have a whole suite of different tools that do these things. I'm not sponsored by them, by the way. I just really like quality software, and I think this is actually a quality package. So it'll do everything that Photoshop will do, and a bit more in some cases. So some of those really exotic effects in Photoshop, they're also included in here. And there we go, Magetsu. We were discussing that yesterday. It's got tone mapping facilities. Well, there you go, Matthew. I'm all for... I don't really mind if they're English or not, but I do think if you use software, it's very easy to go and find a pirate copy. But ultimately, a lot of the people watching this channel are going to be software developers in the future. And when you've written some software and somebody's pirated it for the first time, and you're not making all of the profits you should be making, you'll know about it. Anyway, that's my lecture over. Yeah, right, my player's not going to fit through there because that's not a big enough gap. So I need to put in, I need to take out a couple of those pixels. There we go. Right, so let's just, for the last time, let's just try that out. Oh, squads, thank you for the follow. If I've missed some follows and things, I do apologise. It's a very small alert, given I've got so many different screens and things going on. I do need to make a macro for this because this is tedious. Right, so run. Now, is that an interesting introduction enough to get the player up and running, to get them familiar with the basics? So they can't go through there, they've got to go through here, and when they fall in here, they are trapped. Hopefully, yes, they are trapped. So they have to pick up the weapon, which could be somewhere. Maybe I might make this a bit bigger so there's a bit more to explore here. And then they have to blast their way out once they've got the weapon. So maybe we'll also have mud then here to access the next phase. Okay, but I think that's probably enough level design. What we wanted to look at now is an experiment with the camera. Now I quite like leaky integrator cameras, but I don't know how well it's going to work for this. So let's find out. Let's go do some exploring code. Now, fortunately, because I think ahead, and it's an important thing to do when you're designing code, back in the day when I created the platform game engine, I split this up into player pos and camera pos. So right now, camera pos is just a direct wherever the player is, but it needn't be. It could be somewhere else. So this shouldn't be too difficult to do. If I do camera pos plus equal itself, yeah, that minus camera pos times 0. I'm guessing a number here. We may have to tweak this a little bit. F elapsed time. Let's just see. So does that? What does that do to the camera? Let's have a look. We've basically passed the camera coordinates through a low pass filter. There we go. So that then causes the camera to sort of creep up to the player, but perhaps it's not quite quick enough. Yeah, I would snap that up just a little bit. So we'll go up to 0.9. Let's just try that. Probably still a little bit laggy. I'd want it to be a bit tighter. What do you guys think? Think it's a bit too slow? Maybe it's a bit too slow. Make it 1. Yeah, we can make it 1. That shouldn't be a problem. I guess it can actually be over 1. There's no reason it doesn't need to be. It could be a bit more than 1. So we could try. Let's try 5, right? At some point, there'll be parity between the two because the system, effectively, this is it's a negative feedback system. So 5 has a little bit of slack. Yeah, 5's not bad, but maybe we wanted just a little bit more slack. So these are the parts of the game design I really enjoy doing, just sort of tweaking the values until things start to feel right. And that's one of the reasons I always try to maintain a really rapid development cycle, because I'm always tweaking. I want to compile it. I want to see what the effect is straight away. Yeah, that's quite nice. So that's sort of slackened things up a little bit. Making sure that the ray, so yeah, the ray stuff is fine. That's all still working. It's a little bit less intuitive now because as the screen moves, no, it's just me. It just takes a bit of getting used to. Just have a quick look at the chat. Keep up with things. Yeah, Gareth, the ROM dumper was something I felt that I really needed to do. It also, if anything, it may pacify some of the people that might say, oh, you're using ROMs illegally and things. So, beginning your software engineering course soon. That's a really good point. Sometimes software is so difficult to use, particularly when you get into industry. So, I mean, we use these tools that we take for granted, and things like Photoshop, there's millions and millions of users everywhere. When you work in an industry and you've really only maybe got 20 people using your software, why you've got to lock it down so tightly with so many different licenses, and it can be a complete burden. I mean, that's a good argument, Simple Var. You're right. If you want your children to be able to use these things, then what option do they have? I don't know what Photoshop currently goes for. It's about £30 a month. RAD is much more fun than any other paradigm. Yes, it is. This design kills the flying player idea, though. Potentially, but of course I can always at any point selectively lock the camera back onto the thing that's moving around. I mean, that's the nice thing with how simple it was to get that camera effect. I could just simply choose not to do this. Or I could increase this constant, so when you're in the spaceship, this constant could be something large. I think if we go too large, we'll start getting some oscillations and all sorts of craziness going on, so it might get a bit unstable. So if you're in the spaceship now there's no lag. So that's an easy enough thing to modify. I'll put that back to what was the number we liked? I think it was 3 was okay. Do you know what? I'm going to go with 4. A little bit tighter than it was. Well, I'm thinking, Simple Var, that you have the option of both. I think it's nice for the player to be able to do some of the jumping around since I've got it for free. But also, at some point, in order to go back up, rather than having lots of tedious jumping and platforming things to do, they can get into a craft which can help them fly through the levels. And of course, that feeds into you've got to find the craft, and then you've got to upgrade the craft's weapons in order to get through certain bits as well. So the idea is to try and get the player to ping-pong back and forth across the level. We do need some enemies as well, though. So I need to think about that too. Aftermarket ROMs are talking about something else. So I'm just typing into a different chat here for a minute. You've got to play old consoles on a CRT. It's the only way to play old consoles. Right, so we got another thing to add. What have we not added? We were looking at adding collectibles of some description. And we created another layer for collectibles. Let's have a look. So what I wanted to do, presumably something like coins to start with, but let's pick something really simple. Where is my colour? Colour. So coins, let's just pick those to be 255, 255, and 0. I don't know if it will be coins. It might be something that's relevant to whatever the game theme will be ultimately. Let's say we're just making this up as we go along at the moment. So I can add collectibles into the levels. Maybe this is ammunition, potentially. maybe you can't just randomly blast terrain. You need to strategically think about where you're going to be blasting it, or else you'll run out of bullets. Or something, I don't know yet. We'll make it up as we go along. And we probably also want something that represents the weapon. Now, I'm going to try and use primary colours just to keep things visible, I think. So let's use, for the primary weapon, we'll just use red. Or blue? Why is that chosen some completely different number? Red, 255. 0, 0. There we go, red. So we probably want our gun to be there on the collectibles layer, but on the terrain layer, if I go back to my swatches, I'm just going to put that on a little pedestal, like so. So now, when I'm exporting the world, all of my collectibles exist in particular tiles, but they don't interfere with the scenery rendering. So let me turn off the border, and let's export just this image as being objects. Export. What did we call that? It was called tiles. Test level. Let's call this one objects level. Yeah, okay. And we'll load that up as a separate sprite here, because that's what all it is. Ultimately, it's just an image. Sprite, and we'll call that object. And that was objects level. And we need to obviously create a sprite to store that in. So we'll just copy you. I'm going to get rid of all of this fluid dynamic stuff. I wasn't happy with how it ended up. I'll tell you what. I'll show you how it ended up. Even though it was a horrible mess. It's very much a work in progress. It does not at all represent the final approach. Yeah. So because I really don't know where I was going with any of this. I was just hacking out ideas just to see if anything worked at all. So let me just uncomment that. Right, so is this going to work? Let's have a look. So the idea with fluids is I could hold down that key and drop fluids. As you can see, they're not even falling. Why are they not even falling? What have I forgotten to comment? Uncomment. Oh, I think it was that line there. Oh, it's running very, very slowly. So as you can see, it doesn't behave like fluids at all. Let's just drop one there. And for some reason I started getting this crazy positive oscillation. I think what I needed to do there was reduce the flow rate. Let's reduce the flow rate to that. There we go. So there is actually a finite volume of water as it distributes itself around the level. It's only got a deliberately slow update at the moment, but how it draws it, as you can see, is ridiculous. It's not quite working at all. But it did actually fill things up. And of course, for the final one, you speed this up considerably to watch what's going on. So at the moment it's not tied to a particular constant. I think if I go and sort of blow away part of this mud here. Yeah, so it was doing something regarding the terrain. Anyway, it was a work in progress. I think I'm going to... Oh, you can see it's actually eventually spilling off the rocks. Work in progress. I don't think I'm going to include it. I don't think it adds anything to the game. Obviously, it would be rendered a bit differently. So what we're seeing here is effectively a bar chart of how much fluid is in a particular cell at a given time. And the reason we're seeing it step like this is I should be treating the entire 2D area as a single cellular automata, because it's effectively a cellular automata that's doing the water, and I'm not. I thought what I would try and do is just update one row at a time, and I think that's part of the reason why it looks terrible. And I don't know why it starts generating infinite water, but I'm suspecting that's the reason, because I'm not treating it as a cellular automata. So at some point it's getting data that it shouldn't get. Anyway, the flow side of it did actually work, but just wasn't that pleased with the end result. So I'm going to bin that off. That's a different rabbit hole to go down. Yeah, it could be quite a cool feature. I don't know. If I run out of more ideas, then I'll probably try and think about it again. There's not much code to do it. It really is just a cellular automata at heart with some simple rules. The rules are if the cell below you has enough space to take water and you've got water in you, then fill that cell. If there is no space below you, then you've got to try and disperse laterally. And so you bias how much space is between them and you fill those cells. And if you do it at the right frame rate and the right speed and the right flow, it'll look a lot more fluid than currently it is in its debug form at the moment. Anyway, I'm going to comment that out. And comment out where I'm drawing the water. There it was. There we go. I'll just zoom back in because I know I'm always shouting at streamers for having code you can't see on the stream. So I'm just going to zoom back in there. Right, so, oh, hang on, what's going on here? Thank you, auto comment thing in Visual Studio, for just not working at all. There we go. So we were looking at collectibles. Now, I've not got sprites and things set up yet for collectibles, so what I'm going to do is just draw the objects. So I just need to create some more types for the game. So we had weapon 0 and coin for the time being, and coin was yellow 255 255 0. Object coin, and weapon was red, wasn't it? So object weapon 1, we'll call it, because it's the first one in the chain. Yeah, and that makes sense because we've actually got weapon 0, which means you've not got a weapon at all. Even though it's very briefly, just for a few seconds at the start of the game, we need to consider that. That's a 255 00. And now that's all happening on its own sprite sheet. So let's try and think about how we're doing a collection. Well, we'll draw them first. So where are we drawing the tiles is here. After we've drawn the background tiles, which is all of the terrain, then we want to draw the foreground tiles. And for now, I'm just going to draw the tile as a rectangle of colour. Just so I know it's in the right place, because I've not got the sprites yet, but it's very easy to change them from filling rectangles to drawing a sprite. So if the tile equal, oh, it's not tile, is it? It's actually something else. It's going to have to be object now. So I'll just grab the object. So you can see, because everything's stored in an image, I'm just using the getPixel function of the sprite in order to get what is there. So we'll call this one object. Oh dear. T-objectal. Object. Sprite level, it's not sprite level, it's sprite object. Did I call it object or objects? Objects. Can get from exactly the same coordinates, that's all fine. We sample that particular pixel, and if object is equal to object, what did we say it was? Coin, then we'll draw We'll draw that in yellow, which conveniently I can actually just draw object coin because we know that that's yellow. And if it's something else, in this case weapon, then we can draw object weapon. Or weapon 1, wasn't it? That's what we called it. Weapon 1. Right, so let's just see if that's loaded in the background sprite and draw. Oh, I've disabled the fluid. Yes, good. So we can see the weapon is there, but it's floating in midair. That's because I've not exported the new sprite. And there are the coins, so we have to jump up to get to the coins. And you know what? I'm going to cheat. I'm going to use the feature. Why can't I use the feature? Why is it not drawing my terrain? Because I've not got a weapon. Oh, dear me. Okay, so I have to actually do the jump. So that's good. The coins are there, and now I need to think about how we interface with those to collect them. And the weapon is currently floating because I didn't update the sprite in the background to get it. So let's just do that. Make sure we finish off in a stable situation. So there is the foreground. We'll get rid of that. Put the border back in. File, export. Export, test level. Yes, got to make sure I don't overwrite objects and things now. Guess it's not the end of the world. So now if we load it, the weapon should be sat on a pedestal. Yes. There we go. And so you've collected your weapon and now you can blast your way out. Obviously it's mouse driven. I'm using A and D keys and spacebar to control the player. I do intend using a controller probably for the ultimate control of this. I think the mouse might just make things a bit too easy. Resonant Vitality, thank you very much. Somebody's got to, I suppose. Do come and shout at me if I have a code you can't see. I've obviously missed some context there or forgotten some context. Anyway, that has been about an hour and a half from me, which is probably enough. So 56 viewers, oh, very good. If you have entered the jam, thank you, Danny. If you have entered the jam, good luck. I'll probably do another little stream of this throughout the week. It depends on how much time I've got. But what I'll probably definitely do at some point this year is some follow-up video where this goes and if it goes anywhere at all. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all later. I'd love to pass you on to somebody else, but nobody else seems to be streaming right now. So take care, everybody. Good night.